Hey everybody, welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. We have Frank Figliuzzi back with us. We'll chat with Frank in just a moment, but first, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please rate and review and follow or subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So Frank Figliuzzi was the Assistant Director for Counterintelligence at the FBI, where he served 25 years as a special agent and directed all espionage investigations across the government. He held senior FBI leadership positions in major American cities and was appointed the FBI's chief inspector by then-Director Robert Mueller to oversee sensitive internal inquiries, shooting reviews, and performance audits. Following his FBI career, Frank became a corporate security executive for a Fortune 10 company and led global investigations, insider threat, workplace violence prevention, and special event security for 200,000 employees in 180 countries. He is the author of The FBI Way, Inside the Bureau's Code of Excellence, and Long Haul, Hunting the Highway Serial Killers. Frank, welcome back into the back room.
Andy, my pleasure. Glad we could squeeze this in an otherwise really hectic schedule for everybody.
Yeah, well, really looking forward to getting your expertise here. So before we get into the actual shooting death of 37-year-old Renee Good, which many believe was a cold-blooded, point-blank murder, can you explain for us the role that you served? You were with the FBI for 25 years. The role that you served there and the specific expertise you have in overseeing agent-related shooting investigations like this one.
Yeah, sure. Like you said, 25 years as a special agent, but more pertinent to this, and even more pertinent than the fact that I retired as an assistant director, was what I did a few years prior to becoming assistant director, which was I was named an inspector, one of only 9 inspectors at that time, and then after a year of that, chief inspector. During those 2 years, inspector and chief inspector, I was responsible, among other things, for overseeing agent-involved shooting reviews. So every time an agent used deadly force, whether or not someone was shot or killed, we would have a team that would go out and determine whether that conduct was within the FBI's lethal force policy. And ultimately, we'd come up with a conclusion. Often these are very thick, as you can imagine, very thick reports, very nuanced, lots of factors considered. That report goes to DOJ for review. A special team is assembled to simply review the findings. And those meetings, I remember sitting around a big conference table with DOJ lawyers and prosecutors, getting peppered with questions. It's a rigorous process. I would present my findings to the director of the FBI himself. And that's the process every time an FBI agent used force. Now, in this case, in Minneapolis, it's not an FBI agent who used deadly force, but rather, as we know, an ICE agent. But the FBI is investigating that incident.
Mm-hmm. And so let's get into the incident itself. Immediately after and since that horrible shooting, Donald Trump, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, Vice President J.D. Vance, they've called Renee Good, quote, deranged, quote, a domestic terrorist, quote, a paid agitator who, quote, attacked and surrounded the agents and, quote, rammed her car into the agent. And was shot and killed in, quote, self-defense. That's really an unequivocal exoneration of the ICE agent, Jonathan Ross, while essentially blaming Good for her own death. How unusual is it to publicly draw conclusions like this so quickly and with such certainty before an investigation has even begun?
So during my time in the Bureau, Andy, I've been racking my brain trying to determine whether I've ever heard this kind of high-level conclusion before an investigation even got underway. And my conclusion is, I've never seen this before. And of course, I've never seen the President of the United States say, after an oil executive meeting last week, we will always defend ICE agents and DHS agents. I've never seen a vice president say that something similar, nor the secretary of DHS. So we are now in an environment where, personally for me, I'm trying to imagine myself on the ground leading that shooting review team for the FBI when all of these bosses in Washington up to the president have already essentially dictated the outcome of my investigation.
Mm-hmm.
This may prove to be a tactical error for the White House. What do I mean? I think, of course, there's a core of MAGA believers who are going to see what they're going to see and believe it wholesale. There are really people who are in their rabbit hole, and all they need to hear is the president saying this was great, it was a good shoot, and they're done. But I have to tell you, the rest of the population, I believe, is hearing these conclusions being made, and even they're beginning to wonder, is there any way this investigation is going to be believable?
Yeah.
And the answer I fear is it won't be. And even to pile on even further, Andy, you may have heard that the DOJ civil rights section has come out and said, this is, if you think the president, the vice president, and Secretary Noem's conclusions are harmful to a thorough investigation, now listen to this. The Civil Rights Division at DOJ, which is responsible, among many other things, they do almost nothing these days, but is supposed to be responsible for overseeing criminal prosecutions of law enforcement for excessive use of force. What have they said? They've come out and said, we will not be a part of this investigation. In other words, we think everything's great. So imagine again, that FBI review team is sitting there going, okay, the typical process is
done. We're done.
To present your findings to DOJ so they can make a prosecutive decision. And so what if, and of course I'm being almost facetious here, but what if that FBI team concluded this was not a legit use of deadly force?
Right.
Well, it goes into the trash can because DOJ has said, yeah, we're not prosecuting this.
So given what you just said, what you laid out, and given that the FBI has stated that it is in charge of this investigation and in essence has frozen out Minnesota state and local authorities, and this FBI is led by a loyal Trump sycophant, Kash Patel, and he reports to another loyal Trump sycophant, Attorney General Pam Bondi, it just seems like they're going to be incapable of conducting an objective investigation, right?
Yeah, I think the concern here is even if you have the most trusted, competent agent investigators on the ground, that they're going to be, literally overseen daily, if not hourly, calling headquarters, people asking, what's going on? What did you find? Who did you interview? And I've been under that kind of similar pressure on such investigations before, but never have I had the White House or even the FBI at a high level telling me what to find. I don't, never have I had the Civil Rights Division at DOJ say, we will not prosecute whatever you find. So this turns us now toward the possibility that we'll have whistleblowers in the FBI team, right? Agents don't like to have their work changed. They don't mind edits. They don't mind a boss telling them, put this paragraph over here, or bulk this up, or you didn't do this enough. But if someone's trying to change their work, we're going to probably hear about it. And the other thing, of course, is this now turns toward the state of Minnesota and whether or not they can swoop in and get something done investigatively.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. In the absence of access to a large part of the evidence, if not all of the evidence per se, can they conduct an investigation that actually has any credibility? Number one. And number two, more importantly, perhaps, do you think there's a scenario where public pressure forces the administration to say, okay, we'll do this in conjunction with Minnesota?
So I'll take the last question first. I do think I can envision a scenario where the public outcry is so strong that they acquiesce and do some lesser form of permitting an actual full-blown independent investigation, but rather perhaps suggest that they share the evidence that the state investigators ride alongside the FBI agents on interviews. I've seen that happen before. So yes, I do think public pressure is extremely important here. I note with interest two people who we should be looking at. One is the FBI director who, contrary to his usual methodology, hasn't, correct me if I'm wrong, hasn't posted on Twitter, X,
No.
hasn't come out and said, we're all over this, I've got a conclusion.
Yeah, we got him.
Yeah, no, right. Or we got the wrong guy, sorry. Yeah. No, nothing. Radio silence.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Tom Homan, the guy who allegedly took $50,000 in a kava salad bag, and refuses really to respond meaningfully to questions about it. He has said, let the investigation play out. That's very interesting to me. And I wonder if it's deliberate to try and allow a window for what you just suggested, which is, the investigators haven't totally shut this out yet. I don't know. Maybe I'm being, naive here. But
well, it's an interesting question, and certainly all over the media, Holman has been getting props for his, exercising restraint in calling for calm and to not have a rush to judgment. Maybe it's the New York skeptic in me, but two things come to mind with Holman. One is that he's part of the cabal that has created this fertile landscape for this kind of rhetoric and violent ICE tactics. But more importantly, I think he can be very generous in saying what he said because he knows that the rest of his cabal is leading the investigation and they already know what the outcome's going to be.
Right.
So he looks great. I mean, look at the props he's been getting.
Right.
But it's sort of like a mystery to me. But then I say to myself, okay, am I just too jaded?
No, no. He's very much part of the cabal. And similarly with the FBI director, it could be a strategy. It could be he's been told, keep your mouth shut so that this looks credible. Could be. I don't know. But I mean, the cat's out of the bag. The conclusions have already been publicly announced by people at the highest level. And so to answer your question about the state of Minnesota and whether they can do this credibly, it's a two-part question. Can they do it? Yes. Can they do it credibly for, say, a grand jury or jury? I'm hesitant on that. Why? Your investigation would look something like this. We're taking all public camera footage, recordings from cell phones. We're taking media coverage. We're taking witness statements. We're trying to identify neighbors and witnesses and ring cameras on front doors. But what we don't have is access to the agents involved, both the shooter and his colleagues who didn't shoot, very important interviews. And by the way, I want to point out that agents, if they believe they're facing criminal prosecution, agents, of course, have all the rights that you and I have. They can plead the fifth. They can get lawyer up. They don't have to talk if they're facing criminal prosecution. So in some ways, the Civil Rights Division at headquarters coming out and saying, we're not going to do this. We're not even part of this criminally. It's not happening. Actually can backfire on DOJ because I've had cases in my own career where, you tell the agent there is a possibility of criminal prosecution here. And the agent goes, well, thank you. I'm done. I'm not talking. But if you tell the agent this is not a criminal investigation, they are compelled to cooperate with an internal investigation. They're compelled. And so, the irony here is the fact that Minnesota could prosecute them could actually ensure that the agents clam up. But I'm just showing you that as an aside. So you got a weak case. Do you have access to the radio traffic? Do you have access to the agents? Do you have access to their weapons? Do you have access to the car to determine bullet trajectory? Will the FBI block the state from even accessing the deceased remains to determine bullet trajectory? How do you conduct that investigation? You might get it through a grand jury. If you show the grand jury the videotapes, the video that we've all seen, they could go, okay, It's possible that a crime was committed here, and they could indict. But now you got to go to trial. And any jury is going to go, I'm sorry, but all you've done is show us like cell phone videos.
Right.
That's a really tough case. Now,
And
it could get really ugly. I mean, they could, the state of Minnesota, God bless them, could say we are subpoenaing all of this. We're going to sue. We're going to federal court to make this happen. And now you're into a supremacy clause constitutional argument that federal judges are going to decide, and probably it's going to go all the way to the Supreme Court. Can a state make us a federal agent who's on the job, testify? That's what this is going to look like.
yeah, well, we know the U.S. Supreme Court just loves hearing absolute immunity cases.
The phrase absolute immunity was used by Vice President J.D. Vance.
Absolutely.
It's absolute hogwash. It does not exist.
Yeah. So what is the standard in a deadly shooting like this committed by a federal agent? Is the investigation typically done in collaboration with state and local authorities?
Well, I'm glad you asked this for a couple of reasons, because we need to understand the degree to which this is not normal. Here's the thing. In the normal past, where people actually thought law enforcement generally did the right thing and the FBI could be trusted, in my career, when there was an agent-involved shooting, most police departments told us, look, we've seen this. We saw what you did. It was your bad guy that you were after. He's clearly presented a violent threat to your agent. You guys can do this. Just let us know if you need any help. That is like 95% of the time, Andy. There is a smaller subset where, for political pressure or a questionable shoot, where the state, county, or local authorities would come and say, could we ride along and partner up a detective with your agents to do the interviews together? Could we, or a variation of that, could we see all your interview reports? That's actually quite common. Can we get all your interview and evidence reports so that we can show our community that we also reviewed this? Yes, but what is absolutely abnormal is and it ruins relationships in the community with law enforcement, is for them to say, first to tell you can do it with us, and then to come back and go, Washington told us no. That is incredible. I've never seen that. I've never seen freezing out an agency on a shooting review. So abnormal. Then you also, whether you realize it or not, in asking the question, what is the standard? It's really important for people to understand the standard of review on determining whether it's a legitimate shooting or not. That is a reasonable belief that you are in imminent threat of serious bodily harm or death. That's really important. Every one of those words is really important. The most key word being reasonable. Would a reasonable person, similarly situated, believe that they are under imminent, very important word, like not going to happen in a minute, going to happen now, threat of death or serious bodily harm to yourself or to another? That I want to set people's expectations here, because the studies show, and it's certainly my personal experience, that almost never does a shooting review determine that the agent or officer was unreasonable. Almost never. And why is that? Because the standard is that agent's perspective and whether it was reasonable. There's a lot of wiggle room there. A lot. And I hear people saying, well, look at how, for example, in this incident, look at how Renee Good did the hard turn with her tires away from the agent. That agent is going to say, are you kidding me? I wasn't looking under her car. The car was moving forward. So it's going to be I want to set people's expectations. I've had many shooting inquiries that I've led where the outcome was, okay, we kind of held our nose. This is a legitimate shooting within the policy, and then 25 pages of, God, you put yourself in a god-awful position. Why did you get in front of a car? Why did you draw your gun? Why are you even there? Was a federal crime being committed? What are you doing, right? And that is very common in shooting reviews, but what's the outcome? Maybe the agent is disciplined, or more likely ordered for retraining. But the outcome that matters is it's a legit shoot. I want to set people up for that.
Yeah, and I want to get into that in a moment, the actual elements of the shooting itself. But can you help us understand the definition of domestic terrorist? And more importantly, even if the administration's claims are true, which they're not, does Renee Good's behavior that day fit the profile of a domestic terrorist on any conceivable level?
Well, it's important to work through that. So we have no federal law against a thing called domestic terrorism, number one. But we do have a definition in the federal code. The definition goes something like this. The use or threatened use of violence for the purpose of influencing, intimidating, or coercing a government or civilian population for ideological purposes, which is often defined as for political purposes. So, did Renee Good threaten or use violence for ideological purposes? So, and then is she part of some other group? That helps for the definition, not necessary. Here's the problem with the vagueness of all of this definition and the fact that we don't really have a mechanism to designate domestic terror groups. Trump has manufactured one where he says Antifa is hereby designated a domestic terror group. Do you see the danger in this vagueness? We don't have a system to designate, but I did it anyway. I told the Attorney General to designate Antifa. Okay, we don't do that. If you do the analogous on the international terrorism side, Andy, there's a rigorous process to designate an international terrorist group. It goes across the government, State Department, DOJ, everybody weighs in, CIA, FBI, Treasury. Treasury is a big player in designating an international terror group. But here we don't have it. And what does that allow? It allows for this kind of abuse to call a shooting victim a domestic terrorist. So that's a long way of saying, a domestic terrorist is what Trump wants it to be. And do I think she's a domestic? No. Do I think she was exercising her constitutional rights? Free speech rights, freedom of assembly, freedom to protest. Absolutely. Was she allowing cars to go around her? Did the agent shooter's car go around her? Yes. He steps aside. He has a phone that he's recording with. Come on.
Yeah, well, let's go through this stuff because there's now, I think, 3 videos that I've seen. I don't know if there's a 4th or a 5th, but I think it's just 3. It's the first one. Then there was one that was sort of shot from, if you're in the front of the agent's vehicle, it's like somebody shot it from like 2 o'clock. So you saw him jumping out from around the car. And then the third video, which is his own video. I mean, you bring this up, like, I'm not a gambling man, but I'm going to bet that in the ICE training manual, there isn't a section on how to hold up a phone and a gun at the same time. Right? Because if you're holding the phone, that means you're kind of into recording, right? So if you're watching the phone and checking out what you're recording, like how do we square this insanity of walking up in that kind of volatile situation with a phone in one hand? Actually, I think his phone was not in his shooting hand. It was in the other hand, and he switched.
Right. He had the time to switch. Think about that in terms of imminent threat. Right. If you think you're about to die, are you going to go, hold on, I'm going to switch my hand. I got to keep the camera going.
And not for nothing, if I think I'm going to die, the last thing I'm interested in doing is filming part of it.
Well, okay, but there's a flip side to this, by the way, and here's where I'm going to get conspiratorial, but it's based on evidence. We know that instructions have been given from DHS headquarters to record as much conduct as possible, even with arrest teams coming with their own videographer that's hired by DHS, often in a subcontractor level. They want lots of video. I believe it's not to cover their rear ends, but rather to be able to put up on the website the fear and intimidation tactics and scare the hell out of all of us. I firmly believe that's what it's about. I firmly believe that that's what this agent was doing, why he was recording. As for training, which you briefly referenced, your training is two-handed shooting whenever possible. Two hands on the weapon. You're more accurate. You control the weapon. There's less, a kickback. He did everything opposite to his training, and of course, nowhere are you told how to hold a cell phone while you're shooting and change hands. So this gets to the point where we have to ask a legit question. Was he actually thinking, I'm going to shoot somebody and I need it recorded because I've been instructed to record everything? Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they're still not wearing body cams. Why? Because you can't edit the body cam. The body cam lives forever.
Right.
But you can record with your own cell phone.
And what do you make of this? I found perhaps the most disturbing beyond the actual, what I consider to be actual murder of this poor young woman, is on his cell phone footage after he shoots her and her car just spins out of control on its own and eventually crashes into a tree in a car. You hear someone say,
a male voice,
fucking bitch. Now, the clarity of that comment, I'm no audio expert, but it would appear to be coming from the person who was standing right by the phone. That, to me, is so damning because it speaks to a state of mind issue, which is connected to another state of mind issue, which is the fact that this same agent in June was involved in a I'll call it a near-death dragging incident. He was trying to detain an undocumented immigrant, I believe, and his hand or arm got stuck in the car window, and it dragged him like 300 feet. He needed like 30...
Another thing you're not supposed to do in terms of training is stick yourself in a car. But
right. So he needed 33 stitches. It was obviously a very traumatic. His hand and arm were very injured. I've seen photos of his arm mangled. Yeah. And when J.D. Vance gave his angry, combative rant on Thursday, the day after, he was almost like demanding that the American people have sympathy for this guy because he said that the agent, who was maybe, quote, a little bit sensitive when he was in that situation. When I heard that, I was like, man, why is this dude in the field? Why is he carrying a gun? Why is he not in therapy for his PTSD, which he rightfully would have if he went through that kind of situation? And so his attitude, his state of mind in coming a few months off of this harrowing experience, and then the comment he makes at the end, fucking bitch.
Yeah.
What does that say about his state of mind in that moment?
We may never know we may never see the four corners of this FBI shooting review, but if I'm leading that inquiry, I absolutely part and parcel of the inquiry is to pull the agent's history. I would absolutely include this prior incident. And then the question becomes, Andy, what role does that prior incident play in determining whether this was a legitimate use of deadly force? And the way I would do it is rather neutrally. I would place it in the report, and I would state this could have colored the agent's reasonable perception because he's been there, done that, and didn't want it to happen again. So therefore, it is reasonable. Or, and then the next paragraph I say, or in the alternative, it could have caused an unreasonable, heightened, misplaced fear of a car. And so it should be in the report. And yes, I would get into questions of, did a supervisor of his in the prior incident suggest counseling? Did he go for, in the FBI, this is a kind of, in the FBI, if you're involved in a shooting, you've got mandatory counseling. You got to go, you take some time off. There's a whole, it's done very well generally in the Bureau. And in fact, annually, at least agents who've been involved in shootings meet. They used to meet at the academy and have a group sessions. So it's done well when it works. I would ask those questions with this prior incident. I doubt anything like that was done. I would ask for my report. Do we think this guy should have been on the street? And then let's go to that effing bitch comment.
Right after he shot her, after she literally looked at him and said, hey, dude, I'm not angry at you, dude. I mean, she couldn't have appeared more affable or less threatening.
I agree. I would not have put myself in front of that car. But anyway, if you don't have access to the agent because he's invoking his Fifth Amendment because he fears prosecution from the state of Minnesota, now you're left with making your own conclusions. And again, I would get audio experts at the Bureau to tell me, yes, that's his voice. That's his voice. Number one. Number two, the fact that it won't surprise anybody that after shootings, immediately during and after shootings, there's a lot of obscenity. I'm just going to tell you, the F word is not unusual when people are shooting at each other. Okay, or shooting anybody. But here's what I would zero in on, and I think you are as well. It's the B word. Mm-hmm. This is a derogatory word targeted at women. Mm-hmm. There's already a woman yelling at him. It turns out to be Renee's wife.
Yes.
Right? They've been annoyed all morning, allegedly, because they've been stalking or following them around. Again, I view it as constitutionally protected activity.
Sure.
They view it as hindering their operation. We can talk all about that. But it doesn't. Let's assume they were obstructing and hindering the ICE all morning. That's not a death penalty case, right? So I'm willing to say, yeah, they're a pain in the ass and they've been hindering us. Go ahead and arrest them for obstruction. Go ahead, call the police, who won't come apparently, but in Minnesota. But it's not a death penalty. So your argument there goes nowhere if that's what you're claiming. J.D. Vance, she's a terrorist. They were harassing the agents. Okay, I'm sorry. That's a death penalty? All right. Anyway, I digress. The bitch word is a problem because it comes with the connotation that he's got problems with her and her gender and the wife, and they've had it with her. And I have to then wonder, what would he be calling a guy that presented this so-called threat? Would the guy even have been shot?
That I was just going to say, would he have even been shot? But you're raising a really good point, because this to me is the whole essence of this situation, in that it shows, you're pointing out about the difference between the F-bomb and the B word. I would have so much more empathy for him, or I would have empathy for him, if in that same video, instead of fucking bitch, you hear fuck, oh fuck, fuck.
Yeah.
That would show a contrition,
which you generally do hear. You hear that. You see agents sometimes break down and cry. Sure. You see agents sit down or start shaking.
He just killed a woman.
Very calmly starts walking toward the car, not running, because, by the way, the training, we keep hearing about, he followed training. No, he didn't. You're supposed to immediately render first aid. You, the shooter, and the team you're with. And I've seen FBI agents do this. The baddest dude ever, murderers, people a SWAT team is arresting for murder. They shoot him. They start, and by the way, on every FBI SWAT team, there's a highly trained agent, paramedic, or EMT, if not a doctor present. Anyway, they start immediately staunching the blood flow, tourniquets, all of that for the badass you just shot. I don't see that happening here. In fact, we see the denial of a doctor who wants to help.
That's right. The B word shows anger and hostility. He just killed a woman, and he's angry at her. And so that's why this has to be investigated beyond what it looks like now. So in your professional opinion, because we've heard so much from the senior-most officials, do the videos match the administration's version of this shooting on any conceivable level?
So even trying to be as neutral and as objective as I can be, which was my job on inquiries, there is no way you can, without your face turning red, say that the comments from the president, J.D. Vance, and Kristi Noem, that conclusively this was a good shoot. There's no way that bears any resemblance to what we're seeing in the videos. There's just no way. As I said on CNN over the weekend, the best you can come up with is This absolutely demands a thorough, objective investigation. That's the best I can come up with. Saying people see this differently. Yes, that's precisely why we need a neutral, objective, thorough investigation.
So putting himself in front of that vehicle for shot number one, and then, I mean, the eyes don't lie. As much as the administration wants to tell us, don't believe your lying eyes, the videos don't lie. We see him on the side of the car. He's now a few feet away, clearly out of harm, right? And there's no agents in front, so there's nobody, to your point earlier, that he's trying to protect. So he fires 2 shots into her driver's window. At that point, how is this self-defense?
So you've raised another good point, which is to do a thorough investigation, you have to go shot by shot. Was this shot justified? Was that shot justified?
And which shot killed her?
And which is why, again, Minnesota, I understand that her body is in a county coroner's office, but I don't know if they're going to be allowed to touch the body, because determining the fatal round, yes, that is part of the shooting inquiry. I've seen that. It's fascinating to see a medical examiner do that and explain it. It really is. But and by the way, be prepared for the possibility that all 3 shots were fatal. So we don't know. But although I will say, in my experience, a shot that has had to go through a windshield from a handgun is less likely to be the fatal shot. It's been impacted by that windshield. I've seen 9mm rounds that actually never penetrate a windshield, but that's another story. So yes, they will go shot by shot, step by step. Even if you argue, and by the way, his in some videos, his foot and leg positions caused me to question whether he was truly in front when he fired that first round. But nonetheless, there's a bullet hole in the side corner of the driver's windshield. But you can bend, what hand did he use? And was he twisting around? But that second and third shot, if I was allowed to interview and he was talking, I would have to ask him, you clearly stepped to the side and you fired 2 more rounds. Were you still in threat of your life, and why? But I have to set expectations again. It is whether or not his perspective was reasonable. I would argue,
but reasonable in his mind, or reasonable to any other reasonable human being watching and seeing at the moment he shot her the second and third time.
So this gets interesting. In a administrative shooting review, which is what we're talking about right now, the burden is more to show his perspective of reasonableness. What was he, how did he wake up that day? What happened in the prior incident? What's going on here? If this were to ever go criminal, prosecutors would focus more on a reasonable person standard. A reasonable person standard. Yeah.
When you watch the first video, and it's been slowed down up the wazoo since Wednesday, freezed framed. When she backs up and does her 3-point turn or 2-point,
that's what it looks like, yeah,
and turns the wheel,
yeah,
it's like almost right before she even starts to pull forward, we see him draw his revolver.
Yes.
So again, at that point, it's really hard to fathom that he felt in that moment, right then, that his life was in danger.
Yeah. I see a lot of people pulling DOJ shooting policy. You got to pull DHS shooting policy. Slightly different. Even their policy is don't get in front of the car if you don't have to. If you can step away from the car, do it, right? So
what about don't shoot into a moving vehicle?
Yeah, right. That's everybody's training. It's just stupid. And you can. There are rare circumstances when you can shoot at a person in a car. I've seen it happen in the FBI, and it was legit, but it almost is the textbook case of when you could shoot somebody in a car. Because this person had drove at other agents. It was quite clear this was a bank robber. He was trying to run down multiple agents in a small parking lot. I mean, It's like, what do we do now? But anyway, the action you're describing of drawing the weapon, again, our training in the Bureau, You only take that weapon out of the holster if you're prepared to pull the trigger. That's how fast we're trained to draw and shoot, by the way. It's a split second. So this idea that you walk around with your guns out and you're approaching cars all the time with your gun out, is the person a violent felon? Are you doing a felony car stop?
Right.
Then yes, of course, be prepared to shoot.
Yeah.
But this woman, not a felon, not a fugitive. You don't shoot at fleeing felons anyway, unless they're a danger to the community. So all of that in a real investigation would be covered. And I hope that report will cover all of this ground. But my concern is what happens to that draft report. There's always a draft report. It's always a draft until the bosses sign off on it. And that's my concern.
Yeah. Well, it harkens back to when former Attorney General Bill Barr looked at, I forget what it was at this point, but he was like, nothing to see here. This report is, there's
4-page summary.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
now,
well, and by the way, Congress can hold hearings and subpoena. Right. The draft reports are saved, so we can see the changes made. But also, I just want to say we're understandably focused on this tragic loss of life, but there's such a much bigger picture here, Andy, which is the conduct of ICE and border CBP and border protection, border patrol, writ large, is increasingly seeming like it's designed to provoke violence.
Yes, they're out of control.
Yes, and so that's near and dear to my heart, because that's part of what I always looked at in a shooting review is, can we change? Okay, even if it's a good shoot, can we change what you're doing? So I'll give you an example. We had a lot of shootings. We had a string of shootings around cars. So I'm familiar with the problems of assaulting vehicles. Usually SWAT teams, and they were not executing a felony car stop, a dangerous felony car stop properly. In that they were often not bumper locking the dangerous criminal's vehicle front and back. Because we proved that with just a few inches of space, a car can ram back and forth and get out very quickly. And that's what was causing the shootings. Holy cow, this dangerous violent offender is now getting free from us.
Right.
They are deliberately, I've looked at the stats. The latest stats I've seen from a platform called Trace is that we've got 16 shootings since last January by ICE or immigration agents. At least 4 have been fatal, now probably more. And the vast majority of them are around cars. So in a normal planet, the FBI would be telling its agents, we've got a timeout nationwide. We've got a problem with car stops. You're doing it wrong. And that's typically what we would do. Time out, all SWAT commanders, look at what we're finding. They're doing this deliberately, is my conclusion.
Yeah. I want to ask you about the first agent, because we're talking about the state of mind of the shooter, but what about the state of mind of the victim? He pulls up in that pickup truck, rushes out of that driver's side door, aggressively approaches Renee Good, shouting, "Get the fuck out of the car," while attempting to open her car door and drag her out. A, is it fair to say that he unnecessarily escalated the situation? But more importantly, B, that escalation caused fear in her, prompting her to go, holy shit, this guy's a maniac. I got to get out of here.
You really could be part of an FBI shooting review, because I'm telling you.
I'm in. Just tell me where to show up.
Yeah. Yes, the perception of the victim, and I know people are going to be upset with me just using the word victim. I know it. They're going to say she's not a victim, but screw that. All right. So she
is.
Right. But I will say this. I would not be referring to her as a victim if she was a badass, violent offender,
right,
who threatened an agent's life. That's not a victim. That's that's a dead suspect.
Right.
Subject. Okay. Her perspective is important as well, because one of the things we always look at is, was she hearing conflicting commands? This happens a lot. Again, your training is only one officer speaks. on a dangerous car stop. And by the way, this wasn't a dangerous car stop. So to answer your question, was this an unnecessary escalation? The first word that came out of my mouth when I first saw the video, the very first one, was unnecessary. I shook my head and I said, none of this was necessary. Absolute no de-escalation whatsoever. I get that you're jacked up. She's annoying you all morning. I get it. But approaching the car, get the F out, and trying to open the door, you do that for a violent felon you're arresting, okay?
Right.
But not for a woman who's annoying you. And so you have a discussion, you tell her you're going to be arrested for obstruction or hindering, or we're going to call the police. You need to move along or you're getting arrested. That's how that should work. And what can we do to, you can follow us all day if you want, but you just can't get in our way. That's the discussion that needs to happen. Zero de-escalation. But I have to tell you, federal agents get far less de-escalation training than your local town police officer. I mean, local town police academies now are loaded with de-escalation training and practice and practice and practice. And not so as much with federal agent training. And look at the abbreviated training now that Kristi Noem's putting agents through. Yeah, I don't know what they're getting right now.
Well, apparently they're getting like 50% less training. The hiring practices have been lowered. The standards have been lowered so much because they're just, they're trying to beef up the
no college degree required. Yeah.
Training for Spanish language is gone. Age requirements have changed. They just want to hire people.
And I just want to note, because this is a really startling thing for me. The latest recruitment ad on Instagram, and I've posted this on all of my platforms, Blue Sky, Threads, Substack, and Instagram. I believe it's still up, but it's an ICE recruitment ad at the DHS official Instagram account. It says, it's got an image of like the open plains with mountains in the back and a guy riding horseback, and then a stealth bomber or fighter in the air. And the song that they've chosen to play with that along the Instagram ad, and the title of the song is in boldface across this image, and it's "We'll Have Our Home Again." So when I played that song on Instagram, it so disturbed me, the sound of it, that I looked up the origin of the song. Well, turns out "We'll Have Our Home Again" is a song associated with the Proud Boys and white supremacy. Mm. And if you look at my Instagram account and you look at the link to that history, it's in my bio on Instagram. They are recruiting using known white extremist music.
Yeah, and that's why I asked about Renee's state of mind, because like the rest of us, I'm sure she has seen all the Instagram reels of these out-of-control agents saying and doing really bad, really menacing, and at times violent things. So here you are sitting in your car, and this maniac, excuse me, ma'am, I'm agent so-and-so, show us your hands, and then please open the door and calmly get out of the car. He is combative and looks like he wants to kill her. He's not the shooter, but he escalated that situation to the point where I think she was clearly terrified, and that prompted her to do what she did. But we're never going to know how any of this pieces together unless, like you said earlier, there's a credible, objective, and perhaps independent investigation. I don't know if we're going to get that. Hopefully we will.
I'm not holding my breath, but I do know Minnesota is going to try like hell to get that done.
I hope they do. Frank, thanks for coming on and helping us unpack this madness.
Yeah, and hey, thanks for letting me unload all of this as well.
No, it's good to talk it through because it's so unconscionable.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you, Andy.
Bye-bye. This episode was produced and edited by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-produced by Matty Rosenberg and Jen Hammoud for Radio Free Rhiniecliff, with additional editing by Matty Rosenberg, music by Andrew Hollander, and graphic design by Cricket Lengyel. And with a special thanks to our sponsor, The Epicurean. Again, thanks for listening. Please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to the Backroom with Andy Ostroy YouTube channel, where you can watch full videos of our interviews. See you next time.